Hello my dears, today I present to you a video that I've been thinking about making since before I actually even started my channel, but I was going to save it until April because that is Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month, and I am expecting to see a gross amount of performative activism during that month of people claiming to support the autism community and then in real life continuing to treat us as subhuman. And on one level, it will probably boost my numbers a good deal, which from a business standpoint is a thing to look forward to, but on another level, it is one of my very biggest pet peeves because, and this sentence is about to sound very, very autistic, I don't like people who say one thing and then do another thing because it makes me feel something in the category of angry and disappointed. But anyway, we're going to do this a month early because due to recent world events and the fact that I go to a liberal arts historically women's college in Western Massachusetts that is practically run on completely pointless and useless performative activism, I've been talking about this topic a lot of late and I decided that we're just going to make a video about it and we're going to make it right now. So today we are going to discuss performative activism and virtue signaling, what this has to do with disabled people, which is a good deal more than you think it does, and what we can maybe do about it, or I guess just think about it. This is more of a critique than a here's what you do kind of thing, like a lot of my videos are. Also, probably by the time that this gets posted, this topic won't even really be relevant anymore because I always film things at least a week, if not more, in advance. But I want to say that the lines between performative activism / virtue signaling and real activism are very blurry, and it's really hard to tell from the outside which one of those two things it is, unless you know that person really well and you know what their intentions are behind it. So please be kind to yourself. You're not a bad person for doing any of these things. I just think it's important to reflect on why we're doing things, what our reasoning behind it is, and what the impact of that thing actually is. If only because self-awareness is good both for you and for everybody else, and also because it just saves a lot of energy, because once you've fully reflected, you find yourselves doing things with more purpose and more direction, and it's easier to do because you have a clearer reason behind what you're doing. I also want to send all of my love and support to those in Ukraine, as well as people all over the world that are hurting or in danger because of this conflict or any other conflict or major issue going on that we aren't necessarily talking about right now. Absolutely nobody deserves to feel hurt or unsafe or afraid, and I know that there isn't a lot that I can specifically do to change every situation in the world, but I want you to know that I hear you and I see you, and I am sending all of my love and support in your direction. I will talk in just a wee bit about why I don't talk about this very much, but I do hope that my corner of the internet can bring you some sort of joy, some sort of solace, or even just distraction as something to focus on while everything is difficult. But anyway, let us get into it. So the definition of performative activism, according to the most reliable source in the world, Wikipedia, is activism done to increase one's social capital rather than because of one's devotion to a cause. It is often associated with surface-level activism, referred to as slacktivism. This term gained an increased usage on social media in the wake of the George Floyd protests. Basically, it means that you're being an activist not because you want to support the cause, but because you want to make it look like you support the cause. Usually through things like reposting infographics on your Instagram stories, or using specific hashtags when they're trending, or changing your Facebook profile picture to be some sort of activist thing, posting a black square in your profile, etc., etc., etc. It's basically saying that you believe in that thing, doing a performative thing to prove to other people that you believe in that thing, and that you're a good person because you believe in that thing, and then doing literally nothing else. And another word for this kind of, I'm only doing a thing to look like a good person rather than actually taking the steps to really be one, is called virtue signaling. Now, there are some positives to this kind of activism. It cannot be denied that awareness for any cause is good, unless it's Autism Speaks raising awareness about autism by actually fear-mongering about autism and spreading vast amounts of misinformation, because not all awareness is actually good or factually correct awareness, and it is important to remember that. But in general, if everybody hadn't posted about Sia's movie Music and how aggressively, disgustingly offensive it was, I probably wouldn't even have known that she made a movie because I am so disconnected from the film and TV world. And after hearing about this from social media, I was able to do some of my own research and learn about the thing and then educate others and help uplift the voices of fellow autistic and disabled actors. So it was really, really great. And this kind of awareness also often attracts people to a cause that normally wouldn't have participated in those things. I know that I personally don't care about the Paralympics because I don't like sports, but when Becca Myers had to pull out of the Tokyo Games due to the ableism that put her at risk and a bunch of people reposted that, I ended up going down a rabbit hole and then learning a ton about the issues with the Paralympic Games, and that led me to making last week's video, which hopefully you learned a lot of things and hopefully spread some semblance of the word about that topic. Social media activism is really, really important because it brings publicity to a cause. It means that more people are paying attention to that cause, and it also means that disabled people can be included in this activism. Many forms of activism, like in-person protests or parades, are rarely accessible, and our needs are almost never prioritized in these spaces. But in online spaces, we can make things accessible with alt text and captions, and the ability to make the content you experience sensory-friendly and be able to get it at a time when you have the emotional readiness to learn, and so many other things. Like, if you want an example of how to do online activism, the disability community really should be your case study. Now, because of the pandemic, more people ended up turning to social media for entertainment or just to fill the time because we were all aggressively bored. And so we've seen our community and awareness of disability rights and issues really expand over the last couple years. So keep in mind that when we talk about the issues with online activism and slacktivism, for a lot of disabled people, it's literally all we can do sometimes. Now, one article that I read about this talked about how arguably it's not really even a bad thing for companies around the world to be changing their logos to be rainbow during Pride Month because that is some level of activism and raising awareness. But that's kind of where it starts to get a little fuzzy and a little icky for me. Do we need the Walmart logo to be made rainbow to make us aware of gay rights? Not really. We all know that gays exist and should have rights, and Walmart is not going to change our minds about that or teach us anything new about that. And at the same time, they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars supporting anti-gay politicians. And that's what you often find to some extent on different levels behind this activism. And it's not just companies being disgusting and straight up lying to turn a profit anywhere that they possibly can. I mean, we know the system is a disaster, we're aware of that, but it's this trendification of activism. There's a huge gap between posting a hashtag or a popular infographic and actually joining a community to fight for equal rights. I mean, sure, awareness is important, but everybody's been aware of the wage gap for decades and it still hasn't changed. It's gotten a little better, but not by a lot. Awareness is really only the first step of activism. But when trending political hashtags come up, you can repost them, maybe sign a petition about it, post about that too, and get a lot of likes and nice comments and clout or whatever, and then log off and feel good that you did something productive for the cause. And you assume that, since everybody else is also posting the same hashtag, that there must be some sort of huge community of people that support this idea and are working aggressively to change the systems in place. When in real life, there's only a very small group of people that are actually doing anything to work for direct change. And this is actually a well-observed phenomenon in the field of social psychology called social loafing, where people exert less effort into achieving a goal when they feel that others are working on it as well. Think of your average group project. If you had to do the project on your own, you would probably sit down and just do the whole thing. If you're doing it as a group, it usually ends up being one person doing everything because everybody else just assumes, oh, I can sit back because somebody else is going to do it. And that's what we kind of see on a major worldwide scale with big issues like this. It feels like everybody is working on this group project of changing the system, when in reality, the vast majority are just showing that they support the people who do. Which, cool, awesome, great, thanks for your support, but that doesn't also really help. I've personally been in a lot of really discriminatory situations for disability stuff where everybody else knew what was happening to me and they would constantly tell me that they supported me and thought that I was in the right and that they felt bad that I was being treated this way. And then when we were all together in the situation where I was being actively discriminated against, they just watched it happen and didn't say a word. And then they didn't understand why I was frustrated with them. I mean, knowing I wasn't alone in that situation, in a sense of just knowing I had other people on my side ideologically, did mean a little bit of something to me, and it did make me a little bit braver. But having them say over and over and over again how much they supported me, while also being complacent bystanders at the exact same time, made that support feel really fake. And look, it's one thing when you are standing in a room and only one person's standing up and nobody else is doing anything, because I know that some of those people definitely learned from that gross feeling that they had after that event because they saw the impacts of their lack of action. Not everybody did, but at least a few of them did. And when this happens online, it usually looks the same in theory, but you don't see those effects. So there's no chance for you to really learn from that experience or see that, maybe you aren't actually doing anything productive or really helping the cause. And then on top of that, I constantly see people who are doing that bare minimum shaming other people for not doing that. Like the fact that you just picked a few pretty infographics you didn't read in their entirety and then reposted them on your Instagram story does not make you a better person than somebody who hasn't. I mean, for all you know, they could have personal experience related to that event and it's really triggering for them, so they don't want to talk about it, or they're just kind of taking a break from it and trying to avoid the news for a little bit. They could be doing so much work for the cause that they don't actually have time to post about it, or they just don't want to because that feels ingenuine, or maybe they have an abusive family that follows their social media so they can't safely post about it. You don't know what their story is. In the same way that I'm not going to judge you for posting infographics on your story, because who knows? I mean, you could be impacted by that thing and truly care about it, but don't have the emotional space to write something personal, so you're supplementing with the infographic. Or maybe you are doing the work and you want to get other people to do the same, and you've heavily researched what the best infographic is. I mean, some of my friends, I see an infographic on their story and I know that it's something that they're truly passionate about, and they wouldn't post that otherwise if it weren't perfectly fact-checked. Other people I know, I completely ignore their stories because they just throw every single trending post on there and then add some text like, you don't get to log off, you don't get to look away from this, and if you're not doing something right now, you should be ashamed of yourself. When I fully and completely know that those people spend all of their time either doing homework or sitting and talking bad about people that they don't like, and pretty much nothing else, and then proudly calling themselves an activist. Maybe they go to 1 or 2 meetings a year for some social justice group, but it's one of those ones where everybody has the exact same opinions and they don't actually take any action. They just say that they want to one day and it never happens. And you would think that this is an exaggeration, that this is some sort of cartoonish character that doesn't exist, but I have had several close friends in my life who I spent an excessive amount of time with, and this was precisely their behavior. And when I called them out on it, they would just yell at me for not paying attention to the news or posting things. Which is ironic considering that my job is now being an advocate and an activist, and I'm actually like making a difference in the world while they continue to do those same behaviors. But anyway, I would like it to be known that I try very, very hard not to judge people. I know this seems judgy. It's not. It's more or less against my religion to judge people, and I've genuinely spent a lot of my time and energy reflecting and working on separating actions from intentions and from the people who do those actions. So while I complain about the hypothetical situation, I do think that they are good people and that they have the capacity for real good and they want to make real good. I'm just frustrated that they instead prefer to make it look like they're doing real good and shaming everybody else who isn't doing those specific things. Now, I will acknowledge that the combination of peer pressure and being a college student is kind of what has sparked a good chunk of political movements that have made the world change, and I cannot deny that. But it's one thing to be like, hey, want to come to this protest thing? If you can't, that's totally fine too, but we could definitely use more people because we're going to be standing outside the president's house and yelling at her to divest our college from fossil fuels because for some freaking reason that hasn't happened yet. And another thing to be like, hey, I didn't see you at the protest earlier and you haven't posted on your Instagram story about it. Are you seriously anti-climate? What's wrong with you? Don't you care at all? I mean, if you truly cared, you would have skipped your class and you would have come to the protest. Like, do you remember during post-George Floyd stuff when people kept posting, like, to my white friends, I see your silence, and other just very threatening things as if posting on social media means that you are automatically a good person, and then if you don't post, you're not? Like, in what kind of world do we live in where that is the norm, and people think that this is okay behavior? I mean, I get that social media is a tool for spreading the word and educating, but if every single person who follows you has the exact same views, what's the point? You're just cycling the same 3 infographics over and over again. Also, if you're being so aggressive and mean toward people you want to join your viewpoint, do you really think that's a good tactic? Like, I get the frustration of having a lived experience and feeling like nobody cares about it, but using social media activity to judge somebody else's opinions and whether they're actively working for a cause or not is really weird. I mean, first of all, why do you care that much about every individual human's participation? That's their business. Second of all, we know the internet isn't real, so why are you diminishing people to their internet presence? Ever since I first got social media, I have almost never posted infographics or political stuff in my stories because I haven't been involved in it. And so it never felt genuine to me, and I could never really fact check that or even find sources on the information I was seeing to get me started. And I kind of felt like if I started doing that, I would feel required to pay attention to the news and every single thing going on in the world 24/7 because information is always changing and there's always something new going on. And I felt like in order to be a good person, I had to consume all of it and educate other people. And as a disabled person, whose disabilities are often made so much worse by increased anxiety, I soon discovered how unhealthy and unsafe that was for me, both mentally and physically. I also discovered that every day there are 10 new stories declaring that this one thing is the end of the world and we're all going to die, only for that to very rarely be the case and for that story to disappear the day after. And this is the model because we know that if people are afraid, they're going to want to learn more, which means that we sell more articles, we get more viewership, etc., because, well, capitalism runs the world. And the older I get, the more I pay attention to media that we consume and see these cycles, the more I realize that because we have a 24-hour news cycle and every network is fighting to be the top one, headlines and stories are becoming more and more extreme and more hypotheses and speculation because there really isn't enough to talk about 24/7. And half of the articles are like, you should be more worried about insert thing that isn't really a cause for worry, and just scare people. An example of this, a few months ago, there was an article about how if kids got COVID, even if they were asymptomatic, they'd be at a much higher risk for developing juvenile diabetes, and everybody panicked. But did you know that literally every single virus increases a child's risk for developing diabetes, and also that that risk to begin with is very small? Because they didn't put that into the article. And so people all over social media, they tell you that you need to be paying attention, that you need to be aware of every single thing that's going on, and you're just continuously flooding yourself with sensationalized and upsetting information that's often not totally correct, and telling yourself that that's what educating yourself on political issues looks like. Meanwhile, we know that fear is a terrible motivator because when people are really scared, they completely shut down. My solution for a lot of my life was to get all of my news through late night talk shows because it was actually presented in a less sensationalized and terrifying way. I found that Trevor Noah and John Oliver and Seth Meyers and James Corden and even Jimmy Fallon are all significantly more reliable and teach me more than most of the news that I would typically watch. Which is an issue and an unfortunate commentary on what our news media looks like in this country. But it is the truth. Educating yourself on world issues is important, and everybody should be doing some level of work to learn about other experiences, to be a more worldly person, and to learn about what's happening in the world today. Don't get me wrong, but to quote, I believe it was Dr. Devin Price, I'll link it in the description, you have no moral responsibility to make yourself terrified. That's not going to do anything productive. Well, it is going to keep people coming back to the news sources that make money off of all of this, but it's not going to actually effectively change the world. And this is where we see the sheer inaccessibility of performative activism come in. By creating a culture where you feel obligated to pay attention to every news story and know every single thing going on in the world and post the right things about the right topic and have an opinion on some incredibly nuanced situation that you literally learned about an hour ago, you're burning people out. I mean, I've personally seen people in the disability community set boundaries, say that they've realized that this cycle is toxic, and try to take a break from this to learn new habits, but then peer pressure and aggressive DMs saying, hey, why haven't you posted or spoken about this thing and whatnot, that pushes them to break that boundary, and then they guilt themselves into physically and mentally putting themselves at risk again just to placate somebody else who's doing even less for that cause to begin with. When the pandemic began, I posted on my story that I was going to go off of social media for 2 weeks, and I put all of my devices under my bed, and I did actually make it about a week and a half. I was kind of proud of myself, but I returned to an inbox of hate DMs telling me that I was being irresponsible. Also, because I don't consume any media about climate change, since I find it so overwhelming and it makes me really panic, I've been told that I am a bad person and that it is no excuse because Greta Thunberg is working for climate justice, and she's also autistic, and she struggles with this too. So first of all, I shouldn't have to tell you at this point that autistic people are not a monolith, like at all. Second of all, clearly if you knew her full story, you would know that the stress that she experienced when she first learned about climate change and what was going to happen with it made her stop eating and speaking for several months. So now she speaks out about it because she feels compelled to, because it's the only thing she really focuses on. And I, as a single human, am not going to fix global warming, so why should I make myself physically ill just to be extra aware of that fact? That doesn't seem like a good use of my energy. It's also incredibly unreasonable to expect people to know everything about every single cause and fight for every single one of those causes. I mean, that's not humanly possible. And also, if you were doing that, that would mean that you're clearly not doing a whole lot for each cause, so you're not making as much of a difference anyway. And people are more likely to listen to and believe you if they know that you have some tie to that thing, whether that's through an identity or just working with that community. I mean, it's human nature to really only trust things with direct connections to our lives, in the same way that if you were wondering, for example, how COVID was doing, you'd probably be a lot more likely to trust your brother-in-law's stories from working in the ER than you are a random post on Instagram or the nightly news. And you all know that I am very passionate about disability rights and things, so if I posted something totally unrelated to disability or vintage fashion, you'd probably be a little bit weirded out. But by being consistent with my beliefs and my topics throughout everything that I do and all of my activism, people know that they can come to me for a clear and solid narrative about disability or things related to disability in comparison to somebody else who just posts every trending infographic, sometimes those that have conflicting opinions, and rarely including their own text or opinions along with that. Like you may notice, if I ever repost something on my Instagram story, I will include some words about why I'm reposting that and what I think you can get out of it. And because I am consistent and truthful and I only post about specific things that matter to me, you are much more likely to pay attention to those things and to actually read them and even maybe vaguely care. If I see somebody who reposts a million disconnected things all over the map, for me, that's a red flag. That they're really not emotionally invested in any of these things. They just kind of want to seem like they are. I mean, that could of course not be the case. I know that a lot of things that we consider to be performative often come from a place of sincerity, but because of the culture of social media, of trying to be an individual, of trying to seem like a good person, it doesn't feel sincere. And based on a lot of people I know in real life, it kind of isn't real. I mean, my biggest frustration with all of this is that so many self-proclaimed social justice warriors aren't inclusive at all in their social justice. And by inclusive, I mean that they include every single minority except disabled people. Because they'll keep saying all of these things about how they're activists for everybody and they totally support the disability rights movement. And then when you say, hey, this media is really bad for my health, I need to not interact with it, they immediately come around and they start yelling at you that that's no excuse, that that's white fragility, and that you're a bad person. Or they aggressively shame people who use plastic straws, not realizing that for many disabled people, it's the only way that they can safely eat or drink. Also, Amazon is kind of the only accessible shopping platform, and no matter how much we may boycott it, that's not going to stop Bezos from doing whatever he's doing. It's this overall confusion between morals and reality, one that people rarely realize until they meet me, and then they realize that their ideals of anybody who uses Amazon is complicit in the capitalist regime and should be punished mean that now a disabled person has no way to get their medications. I've watched former friends of mine talk badly about people who don't pay attention to the news at all, but then after they witness my first migraine/panic attack combo, which are super spicy, they decide that anybody, except me of course because I have a valid reason, who doesn't pay attention to the news is a bad person. And they continue to claim that they are for the rights of all people and welcome diversity. But then at the same time, if somebody does something even remotely different than them, they immediately talk bad about them and call them heartless, not understanding that there's reasons behind it, even though they made that exception for me. And rather than seeing this nuance outside of themselves and understanding that every human has limits and has needs and needs to take care of themselves, there's no point in making your own life miserable and making yourself unsafe to do something that is very tiny and probably won't have a major effect on the wider issue anyway. I mean, sure, if we all work together, we can make a huge difference, but we should also be accepting of those whose needs require them to do otherwise. You may want to paint a picture of an us and a them, but by doing that, you're not seeing everybody's experiences either. So yes, I do have a public platform. I do feel a lot of peer pressure to post about things that I don't really know a lot about because I'm afraid that people will think that I am a terrible person for not doing that. And I feel obligated to use my platform to educate and to teach about the communities that I represent. But also social media can sometimes feel like an echo chamber of negativity. And while focusing on positivity is also not a responsible worldview, it does feel like the only major thing I could do on top of educating about the things that I'm actually qualified to speak about is to be a little bit of a relaxing and a safe space for people to go to in order to remember that the world isn't all bad. And while posting one thing a day on my Instagram story that made me happy may seem silly and ineffective, the dozens of DMs that I've gotten saying how much this has helped people to get out of anxiety spirals and made their day has proved otherwise. I mean, if there's a thing going on in the world that every single person knows about and is talking about, an example being the George Floyd protests and Russia's invasion of Ukraine, I'm not going to post about it. I know that you're seeing what I'm seeing and that it's everywhere and that it's really upsetting, but you also feel like you can't pull yourself away either, and it's wrong if you do. And maybe I just do this in defiance of the people who used to bully me for not posting any of those infographics, but maybe I just think that it's kind of pointless and extra unnecessary stress for me. But either way, if you see an infographic or something on my story, you know that it's important. And it's probably something that is under talked about outside of the disability community, and I will likely explain to you why it is there. I like to trust that everybody is doing the best that they can, that everybody is trying their absolute hardest, and that if you want to help a cause, you'll look up how to help a cause. And we'll probably find better sources than you would on Instagram. My lack of posting on a topic is not that I don't care. It's that I want to leave space for those who have the capacity and the knowledge to educate on that topic. The requirement of our culture that you must have a strong opinion about every single topic, regardless of what you may or may not know about it, is really, really harmful. I mean, people always say that life is short, and it used to kind of annoy me, but part of being chronically ill and in this community has made me realize that it is. Life is short, and energy is so few and far between. So I like to spend my energy on things that are tangible, things that I can focus all of my energy on and purposefully make a little bit of change. And when I feel out of control and helpless, I simply reflect on what I can do within my immediate community to help them to have the energy that they need to go forth and make productive change. You simply can't be an effective leader or educator or advocate if you're so anxious or so tired all the time that all you can do is lay in bed for hours. That's not helping anybody. If you don't know where to start by taking care of yourself. Everybody has different gifts and different ways that they can give to a cause. In the same way that if you know giving blood makes you really sick or woozy, you can bake brownies for the nearest blood drive. You're still helping out, just in your own way that's safer for you. That doesn't make it wrong or bad, it just means that you're prioritizing your health so that you can spend more of your time and energy giving back to your community in the ways that are better for you. And while that may to other people look like laziness or rudeness or like maybe you don't care, you know that you do care and that you are giving back in the way that you can. If those people think that you're only a good person if you actively harm yourself, they're not people that you want to be spending time with anyway. This video has kind of gone in a bit of a direction that I didn't quite expect it to when I first came up with it, but I hope that those of you who are feeling a bit powerless and paralyzed right now, that this was some sort of comfort for you. Know that everybody copes with things differently, and you don't need to justify your actions to anybody other than yourself. As long as you are not actively causing any harm to anybody, including yourself, you're handling it completely perfectly in my mind. If somebody comes after you for it, just send them this video. I know that what I have said in this video is for some reason a hot take, but on airplanes they always tell you to put on your oxygen mask before you assist anybody else with theirs. And I feel like logically that should apply everywhere else too. Like, the cognitive dissonance of this whole topic is simply fascinating and confusing and upsetting, but mostly fascinating to me. But anyway, thank you for listening and learning. Please take care of yourselves. Please be kind to both yourselves and to others. Don't judge people for things that you don't know about, and hang in there, my dears. I'll see you in the next one.